Before we get into how the Vikings got so lean without losing muscle, let me ask you something you'll almost certainly get wrong. What was one of the most important things a Viking warrior carried into battle? It wasn't his axe, it wasn't his shield, his sword, or even the silver around his neck. Instead, it was a small kit of grooming tools: tweezers, a comb, an ear spoon, and a razor. Because here's what the raids and the horns never tell you. Some of the most common objects archaeologists pull out of Viking graves aren't weapons at all. They're grooming tools. These were men who bathed every week and combed their hair daily, and even bleached their beards lighter with strong soap. They were, by a distance, the vainest men in the medieval world, and a man that was deliberate about how he looked was never careless about how he was built. Because that's the part we've forgotten. That lean, hard Viking body, every muscle visible, nothing wasted, yet strong enough to row across an ocean, is the one combination the modern world swears you can't have. Cut the fat, and your muscle goes with it. Build the muscle, and you bury it under fat. The Vikings refused to choose. They built both on purpose, the same way they built that beard. So how do you do that with no gym, no protein powder, and no idea what a calorie even is? Subscribe and stay to the end. Because it wasn't one trick. It was a system of 4 parts. And the final piece, the one that kept the muscle while the fat burned away, is the part almost everyone today gets exactly backwards. But first, we have to prove it was even real. In the year 921, an Arab diplomat named Ibn Fadlan met a group of Norsemen trading on the banks of the Volga. Almost everything about them unsettled him: their customs, their gods, and their habits. But he couldn't stop staring at their bodies. He wrote that he had never seen more perfect physical specimens, powerful, hard, and built unlike anyone he knew. And he wasn't flattering them. The bones agree. Hand a Viking skeleton to a modern forensic expert, and the body tells on itself. The bones are thick and dense, heavier than most of ours. Where the muscles once attached, the bone is raised and roughened, scarred by years of pulling against enormous load. An osteologist reads those marks like a logbook, and the log says the same thing every time. This person worked hard, their whole life. So the lean, muscular Viking is not a fantasy, it's a forensic fact. The only question is how, with no trainer, no science, and no mirror but the river. The answer is that they curated it, the same way they curated that beard. And it began on the plate. Picture what a Viking actually ate. Almost every meal started the same way. Barley and rye, boiled into porridge or baked into flat, heavy bread. Around that came fish, and on the coast, mountains of it. Then dairy, skyr, a thick soured milk, much like the strained yogurt you would eat today. Whatever the cold ground gave up: onions, peas, cabbage. And meat, when they had it: beef, mutton, pork. Plain, heavy, honest food. And that was the whole list. Now look at what isn't there. There is no sugar. The sweetest thing a Viking ever tasted was honey, and he tasted it rarely. Their entire world was free of the one ingredient that fattens us fastest. So their blood sugar stayed flat. No spikes, no crashes, no cravings an hour later begging them to eat again. Just plain, heavy, filling food. The kind that tells your body you are full long before you have eaten too much. And they ate just twice a day. One meal after the morning's work had begun, one when it was done. No grazing, no picking at food from dawn to dark. But plenty of poor farmers ate plainly too, and stayed soft. The plate was only the first of the 4. And the second was hiding inside that grooming kit all along. Because here is what the tweezers really tell us. Most of these men were not full-time warriors at all. The word Viking was closer to a job than a people. To go Viking meant to go raiding, and most Norsemen did it for a few weeks a year at most. The rest of the time, The man was a farmer, a fisherman, or a builder, which means the warrior's body was never built by war. It was built by their everyday activities. Think about what an ordinary day demanded. Rowing a longship is a full-body haul. Legs, back, shoulders, grip, all of it. And when the wind died, a crew might row for 8 hours straight. On land, it was no gentler. Hauling timber, swinging axes, clearing fields, carrying water up from the river, one heavy bucket at a time. Children worked young. Nobody sat down. Sitting was not an option. A body that moves like that, all day, every day, is always running slightly behind. Not starving, just a small, constant gap between what came in and what burned off. A gentle deficit, paid not in hunger but in motion, and held across an entire life. But that should come at a price. Burn fat that long, work that hard on so little, and the muscle is supposed to waste away with it. Theirs did not, partly because of a second engine they never even chose to switch on. The cold. Remember that weekly wash. The Norse word for Saturday is, to this day, laugardaga, wash day. But it was not only a bath, it was often a sauna. They heated it by pouring water over fire-hot stones, then followed it with a plunge into freezing water. And beyond that one day, their whole world was cold. The sea, the winters, the air they slept in. And cold does something to the body. It floods you with a chemical called norepinephrine and switches on a special tissue called brown fat, whose only job is to burn fuel to make heat. Your body starts pulling fat out of storage and setting it on fire, just to keep you warm. The Vikings were taxed like that every cold hour, without lifting a finger. There's a second gift in that cold. The stress it brings is sharp and short. It hits, then passes. And that's the opposite of the stress we live under now. Low, grinding, never switched off. Chronic stress like ours floods the body with cortisol, which tells it to hoard fat around the middle. The Vikings' stress spiked and vanished. Ours just hums, all day, forever. So between the plate, the work, and the cold, the fat had nowhere left to hide. But none of that explains the muscle. And the muscle is where almost everyone today gets it exactly backwards. Here's what people believe, that a deficit always eats your muscle. Lose the fat, lose the size. They come off together. No choice in the matter. It feels obvious, and it's wrong. What actually protects muscle in a deficit is two things, and the Vikings had both without trying. The first is a reason to keep it, and brutal daily labor is the loudest reason there is. Use a muscle hard enough, often enough, and the body refuses to burn it. It guards it as essential. Stop using it, and the body decides it's dead weight and feeds it to the fire. The second is raw material. Protein, and the Viking diet was drowning in it. All that fish, the skyer, the meat whenever they had it. Modern studies are blunt about this now. Keep protein high while you're in a deficit and working hard, and the body spares the muscle and burns the fat instead, sometimes even building muscle as the fat falls away. The Vikings couldn't have told you a word of the science. They just ate the fish, rowed the boat, and kept the body. Now step back and see the whole machine. A plate with no sugar, so the fat had nothing to feed on. A body in motion all day, so the deficit stayed gentle and never stopped. A cold world that burned fat for heat without being asked. And a flood of protein, with hard work demanding the muscle stay, so it stayed. 4 parts, and not one of them works alone. Eat clean, but sit still, and you stay soft. Work all day, but live on sugar, and you bury the body under fat. Freeze and labor with no protein, and you waste away to nothing. The Vikings did not balance these on purpose, with charts and numbers. They simply lived all 4 as one life, as deliberately as a man dragging a comb through a bleached beard. Which brings us back to that grooming kit on the riverbank, and the Arab who could not look away. The vain, lethal man Ibn Fadlan described had built his body with the very same care he gave his hair. So the leanness was never the goal. It was the proof. The ancient way exists to recover what was lost. If this changed how you think about the next time you eat or move or step out into the cold instead of away from it, then you already know what to do.